Good evening, everyone. How are we doing? I hope everybody's good. I hope everybody came with a smile. We're glad to have you here tonight for this town hall talk around. And when I say talk around, because I'm hoping it will go both ways. And I am, of course, Anthony Nolan. I'm state rep for New London, Connecticut. This is
Chris Conley, I'm state rep for the other portion of New London. I share with Anthony, and half of Groton that I share with Aundre.
And it is
Hello, everyone. Representative Aundre Bumgardner. Great to be with you all. I have the privilege of representing the southern half of Groton and the southwestern corner of Stonington, including all of Mystic, and I have the privilege of serving with these two outstanding legislators as well. It's great to be with you all this evening.
all right. And today we're glad to have everybody here. I want to just shout out Craig in the back. He is our forerunner. He gets us, to what we're going to do as far as events. He coordinates half our lives for us. So we just want to say thank you for being here and thank you for helping us put this together. And I think we'll just start with committees.
Okay, so we are starting session on Wednesday. We start Wednesday at 10 a.m. The governor, if folks would like to watch, his State of the State will be Wednesday at noon. You can watch we'll be there. You can watch in person with us. You can also watch from the comfort of your own home. It'll be live streamed on CTN, which is our state public access channel. It will also be available online at cga.ct.gov. You can always watch us live either way. And I think NBC usually does the State of the State. It'll start at noon. It doesn't go longer than an hour. It's pretty short. So if you want some lunchtime political discussion, Wednesday's your day. And then we start in our committees. I already got committee hearings for next Friday morning. I sit on 3 committees. I sit on Judiciary Committee, which does judges, and we will be meeting Wednesday for sure, because we have to reappoint some judges. Judges in Connecticut are reappointed for a term of a certain amount of years. And when we have an even session, like 2024, which is an even year, we start in February. So we got some folks that need to get moved through to keep their jobs. So they will have a public hearing very early in the session, if not Friday, definitely on Monday or Tuesday of the next week, for voting pretty quickly so that we can get those folks before their terms expire. We don't want to lay anyone off accidentally. We only want to do that on purpose. So, and Judiciary, besides doing judges and commissioners, we approve settlements filed against the state of Connecticut. So you did see one in the newspaper that we don't have yet, but I'm sure we will have next year of an unfortunate event. We approve settlements over a certain value of dollars. We also do court operations. Any bill that involves a civil penalty or a criminal penalty goes to Judiciary, so it's a very busy committee. And then I sit on Transportation Committee, so if it's on your roads, in your air, on your rails, if it moves, it goes through Transportation Committee. Vehicles go through transportation. We do things with the airports every year, with the trains every year, and of course all of our bills on road work. And then there's a bonding portion of Transportation Committee for our bonding for Gold Star Bridge and bonding for all of our state highway. So there's a lot of work there too. And then I sit on Planning and Development. Aundre sits on that with me as well. That is our catch-all committee. While it does a lot, your municipal laws, your municipal planning and zoning, if it doesn't have another place to go, it generally ends up in Planning and Development. You'll get a variety of things, everything from animal laws, things about your ACOs or your municipal animals and policing. We do our statewide plans for development. So our desires is to how to make more housing available for folks. It goes through Planning and Development and our statewide plans. I'm also chair screening committee for the House. So that's after bills make it through their committees. Then they go to the screening committee, which looks at the bills with the caucus attorneys to finalize wording, to make sure everything is funded in the budget, and gets the bills in order for House session. So after they make it through the committees, then everything goes to screening, and we get to work to try to have a productive session. We will start on Wednesday at 10 a.m., and we will end statutorily on Wednesday, May 8th at midnight. I only know that day because it happens to be my mom's birthday. So maybe we'll have mom over for dinner at the last day of session. We know where we'll be that day till midnight, all together. It's about 3 months, so bills go pretty quick, from ideas to making it out of committee, to making it to the House and the Senate and getting the governor to sign. We're going to have a good, quick, fun year.
Good, thank you, Christine. I am on the Veterans Committee. I am the co-chair, the House Chair for the Veterans Committee, and that has to do with anything that has to do with military and veterans. This year we have a great amount of bills that we're going to put through to get through veterans. We know that they all won't go through because after our screening they have to be screened again. And Christine helps us get through our priorities in regards to those bills. I am also on the Appropriations Committee. The appropriation deals with the budget, salaries, contracts, and anything to do with money. That's what appropriation does. Also on the Intern Committee, it helps interns come into the Capitol, into the LOB to work with legislators to find out the ins and outs of legislation and trying to get bills through. Many of them help. Legislators are assigned an intern. Not all legislators take an intern, but we try to make sure that legislators do work with our interns and make it possible for them to learn. Our interns do earn, I believe it's 6 credits.
Up to 60
Up to
time
6
credits, depending on how
credits,
many hours they wish to work.
in regards to the work that they do. Our interns save us over 2,000 hours. You know, overpaying others 2,000 hours worth of work. They're very important, and we have a really good time with them. I'm also on probably about 16 subcommittees, from legislative research to regulation and protection to health. Each of those have subcommittees. I co-chair some of the subcommittees also. And we are trying to get a lot of stuff done this year in such a short time. So we are working to try and develop what we need to develop so that it benefits the state of Connecticut and its constituents. Aundre?
I serve on 3 committees, standing committees. As Representative Conley mentioned, Planning and Development, which has cognizance over land use, kind of a catch-all as well. But land use, planning and zoning issues, also, with respect to some of the inland wetlands issues as well, and takes on the statewide plan of conservation and development. Also serve on Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee, which is the other side of the coin from Representative Nolan's committee, the Appropriations Committee. FRB focuses exclusively on the revenue side of the budget, so tax policy, at the state level, any fees, right, that you pay to the state of Connecticut. We take up that side of the budget and also have to approve the revenue side of the budget and revenue estimates for our state. Within that committee, there are 2 standing subcommittees, the General Obligation Bonding Subcommittee as well as the Transportation Bonding Subcommittee. I serve on both of those committees. And for about maybe 4 or 5 meetings throughout the year, we meet with various agency heads, department heads for our respective state agencies to go over their capital needs. So any investment we make through bonding at the state level for new buildings or certain capital projects, we hear from those respective agencies, which is always a great opportunity to articulate our needs for our region. One of the beauties of, I think, the way all of our committee assignments stack up is that we divide and conquer. We, as Representative Conley stated, serves on Judiciary, Representative Nolan on Probes, and so it's great to kind of divide and conquer and work as a team in our respective committees so we can kind of punch above our weight in Hartford. And also serve on the Environment Committee, which has cognizance over the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, Department of Agriculture and the Bureau of Aquaculture, and admittedly one of my favorite committees to serve on, in large part because of the concerns that many of my constituents raised with respect to environmental quality concerns, and to mitigate and tackle climate change, the rising sea levels our region will be facing. So it is an honor to serve on all three of those committees, and also serve within the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus. I'm the secretary of the caucus, and I'm very privileged to serve with Representative Nolan in that space as well, making space with many of our Black and Latino legislators, and we meet very regularly and to talk about the challenges facing our unique communities. But again, committee, our committees really do largely define a lot of the work we do within Hartford, and we show up to our public hearings and vote on legislation before it obviously goes to the bodies, the House and the Senate at large.
Before we open up for questions, we know that there is a competing meeting that starts at 6.
Uh-oh.
So if folks are going to the competing meeting, we want to give you the ability to ask your questions first. Okay. Everyone know.
All right, so questions? Or we could talk
We can
about
talk about our
we
priorities,
could talk about
too.
our priorities or our bills that we previously have done, or we can hear. I know you had a question that you wanted to talk about in regards to education. maybe?
Can I ask that question right now?
Yes.
And thank you, and I'd like to just tape a little bit of the answers for my group, which is a local group. This is all good, and there's no gotcha here. This is just, my group is very interested in education. Education, as you all know, and I know Representative Nolan has been very involved, and maybe others as well, but he's been very involved in my career in education, and so I just want to give a shout out to that, and I appreciate that, and you've been serious about it. As I have others, by the way. But with that said, the question is, this coming session, if citizens in my group want to get involved and write letters of support and or testify at appropriate hearings, is the ECS, the Education Cost Sharing Formula, going to be tweaked this session or not?
So the education cost sharing formula was tweaked in last year's budget, which will be heavily discussed this year's session.
Is that the SB1?
No, SB1 doesn't exist anymore. So SB1 in 2023 is over because 2023 ended. SB1 will be reused in 2024. It will be a completely different bill. We reuse our numbers. So
With a new number?
brand new number.
Okay.
So every year, first bill, SB1 is a Senate bill because it starts with S. Senate reserves 1 through 10 for Senate priorities. House bills, we start with 5,000. 5,001 is the first House bill. So when we enter bills, they get 5,000 numbers, and the Senate bills get the lower numbers. So everything for 2023 that did not pass when we adjourned in 2023, those numbers no longer exist. So if you are writing to us, please look up this year's numbers. So we do get a lot of letters on and you look up the bill number, it'll be an education letter, and the bill will be about transportation because they're talking about the prior.
So like SB 948 is out?
Is out.
Right. Okay.
Everything is brand new year. But the education cost sharing we added $181 million to the fund last year. So $181 million are out for sharing in all the towns, which will be a huge change for our kids statewide. Now, each of us, we have priorities for Southeastern Connecticut to get more of that $181 million. Crystal clear that my colleagues in other areas of the state also have priorities to get more of that share as well. So it will be discussed by population of students, by income of students, we look at distressed municipality, alliance districts, and a lot of other factors. So I would say the best thing would be that you'd like more money to your community because, and then fill in the rest of that sentence.
What is an alliance district?
There are 35 alliance districts in the state, and they are the 35 municipalities the students are underperforming the most. Groton and New London are both alliance districts.
Oh, so that if they start performing better, do they still get those alliance grants?
You're on alliance, you get re-looked at least every 5 years, and the 35 most underperforming districts can change. Generally, the 35 most underperforming districts are the 35 most underperforming districts.
What is an opportunity district?
Or opportunity zone?
No, Opportunity School District. No?
No.
No.
The bottom 10 of the Alliance districts. New London is one of those, but go ahead.
Yeah, so when you're in when you're in the Alliance District, you get extra opportunities for funding, you get extra resources for the state. You are more responsible for reporting into the state about student performances, about grants, about, and the state has more hands-on in those municipalities because they do need extra help. The teachers and the staff get more resources from the state for training and for free opportunities for the teachers and the staff.
Are resources just a means of absolving everybody of responsibility? Because maybe money's not the problem.
So that's a different issue, but the state can come in and take away municipalities' ability to have their own school system, and that unfortunately has happened in New London before. That's why you have an Alliance District where the state is more hands-on. So the state can take away accreditation and can take over a school district if that needs to happen.
Following up on this gentleman's question, and I won't have a lot, this is just one of a few more. The issue of post-COVID and mental health needs in the schools, does that come from possibly a separate funding source outside of the education cost sharing?
I think that's a yes and a no question, because I think that in the past, with funding, there's funding set aside for mental health, but I think a lot of schools use their ARPA money for mental health purposes also, which is going to become a problem.
Right.
And it is that is what we try to ask schools not to do, is sometimes schools hired positions that are not going to be covered after the ARPA funds stop. So it's going to become a hardship. And then there's a lot of schools that are asking for funding to recoup those positions when the ARPA money stops. It's going to be very difficult for schools to pick up that funding because we kind of gave them a heads up. It's not going to be replenished funding. So there's a lot of schools that are going to be struggling to decide what they're going to cut and what changes they're going to make when it comes to some of those fundings. But there is a great amount of funding that was put into mental health for the state.
Through the feds?
Through the feds. Connecticut did some too through, like Child and Family Agency has a new crisis, Children's Crisis Center in a few districts. New London happens to be one of those districts. That's on Hempstead Street. Very good facility. It's being used a great deal now. We just got to get the word out there for people to, to know when to use it and how to use it, because it is a great facility.
So last question for me. Oh,
If I could, as much as it's important to highlight the funding issues, funding disparities, of course, it's no question that in the last few years, especially since with ARPA funds and CARES Act funds, a lot of the school districts through the ESSER program, those dollars are about to dry up, if not already, this past fiscal year. So that is something that all of us should be paying attention to, especially knowing kind of how each of our school districts have allocated those funds to address a host of issues, in particular our student social and emotional needs. Senator Murphy and a handful of others have been talking a lot about the issue of loneliness that exists, right? And I just anecdotally, from talking to our community members, neighbors, parents, it is no question that the social and emotional needs of our children are far greater and more significant than ever before. And I think that is largely due to the pandemic, right? And so I think we should all really pay attention to the fact that at least 1 in 5 children unequivocally feel lonely in our communities. And I think we need to be very well intentioned, be very intentioned to address that, and whether that's through our school system, whether that's through after-school programming, whether that's through outdoor programming, during the summer, they're summer, so they're not just at home. We need to take a look at that, and so that's something I'm committed to. I know both of my colleagues care deeply about that, but I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't think we, as policymakers, really think about those problems as such. We think about the money issues, right? But there's like real life impacts here.
Well, I want to thank you all for your service. I really appreciate it.
If you get a chance to grab some of the flyers that are in the back, on page 4, it does talk about children's mental health services and how they provide medical reimbursement for certain mental health evaluations now and services at school-based health centers, which is another greater thing that they're doing there. We have more school-based health centers now. I believe they just did one in Groton.
Yep, at Grasso.
At Grasso.
So the students at Grasso now have the
Yeah.
ability to go to physical and mental health at the facility without someone to pick them up and drive them or take time off from work to do that, so they can go see a physician
Yeah.
or a PA or an assistant when they need to.
Yeah, and there was a lot of collaboration with, what do you call it? I just forgot what it was. Oh, nonprofits. There's a lot of collaboration with nonprofits now, trying to loop the nonprofits into the school. And we'll talk about it later, but not only with mental health, but diversionary programs. We're starting to do a lot for our youth too, but Children's Mental Health Service was one of the priorities that we had. It's on page 4 in the packet.
And the school-based health centers are not to be confused with your school nurse, so to speak.
Correct.
I'm sure many of you saw on the news, the VNAs recently announced that they will not be continuing the contract. That is a program provided by Yale. Will not be renewing their contract to provide nurses to our respective school districts. So Stonington, Groton, New London, all the communities we represent will be impacted by that. And I know all 3 of us are on the ball and have engaged the hospital directly because we've got a lot of questions just with respect to how we plan on offering robust nursing program. I do also want to give a shout out to one of our health partners in the room, Nolan Health District as well. And certainly appreciate your continued support that you provide to us as area legislators, and I want to commend you for the great work you do for the healthcare field as well. Yes, I do want to note that because some folks may not realize or be able to distinguish between the two.
And your school-based health centers do take your insurance.
Mhm.
They do not turn any student away for lack of insurance, but whatever insurance the student has is billed for the services. The family, however, is not billed for copays or deductibles. So if the parent or guardian would sign the child up so the child can go, and the parents get called, the children are not receiving health care without their parents knowing. But let's say if the child has an ear infection, which is a very common problem, you can go see someone during your study hall, leave with a script, and then when you get home, mom or dad or your parent or guardian can go pick that script up, and no one's missed time off from work. You've gotten the care you need, copay deductible free. So we've got trying to get rid of as many barriers as possible that are stopping children from getting appropriate health care, which is causing them to lose time from school.
Another, something that a constituent did bring up, and I know there was a couple of churches in New London at one time that had medical services in their church where they had doctors that were part of their, part of their membership, and they had little areas in the church where people can get checkups, people can get blood pressure, people can talk about illnesses. So a good thing, hopefully, in either this session or next session will be to incorporate churches in that like church-based nursing program or something that people can go to the churches and get some assistance when it comes to medical care too. That is one of the missing gems, I think, that we overlook in our community, how much we can use our churches for services. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I would like to ask a radical change of subject about the issue of medically assisted dying, which I understand went to the Judiciary Committee last year, but never made it out. And I'm relatively new to this topic, and I find it hard to track where things are and how to get involved and how to know what the next step is going to be. So anything that you could clarify for me would be much appreciated.
Well,
We might do another event with Greg about how to track bills in the future, or shortly. We can do those as remote events, and there's a system set up that you and others might enjoy seeing. So that bill has been around, I'd say, for at least 4 or 5 years. It comes out of, it starts in public health every year, and it comes out of public health. And then it does have to go to Judiciary Committee because it's making changes in criminal statutes. So every year it has to go to Judiciary Committee. It's making something that's currently against criminal penalties. They're getting rid of those criminal penalties. So it cannot make it past to either the House or the Senate. And again, just for some nerdiness, if it starts as a House bill, it goes to the House first. If it starts as a Senate bill, it goes to the Senate first. All of our committees are joint committees. We have members of the House and the Senate on all the committees, so people don't have to go to multiple public hearings, and it makes it just a little easier for everyone. So this year, as a member of Judiciary Committee, we did not get the bill. Now, the bill did, I'm sure, I know in screening that it got sent to Judiciary Committee because it can't go anywhere besides Judiciary Committee. Now, there are timing issues. If the Committee of Cognizance does not get it out early, Judiciary Committee only has so many days where it can hear matters before their time ends as well. So sometimes the reason that a committee doesn't hear a bill has nothing to do with the matters of the bill. It has to do if there are holidays in there and weekends in there, and if the committee had public hearings on other issues that were previously scheduled, and sometimes they just can't do it, even if they wish to do it within the time frame. That's why it's a lot of times very important for chairs who want to get bills over the finish line to try to get those bills out of their committee as early as possible. And again, they have time constraints as well. They could have a chair who had, an illness. They could have a chair we had a chair in one of our committees who had a birth in their family last week. So of course, that's a big event, and that person wouldn't be expected to be at a meeting on the same day that their significant other is giving birth. So all those factors kind of weigh into the reality that has nothing to do with the law. Then we get into the law, and this year I did not see the version of that law. I did see the version of that law 2 years ago, and the version we got 2 years ago was actually under review by federal court as to whether or not it violated sections of the Constitution. Now, I honestly don't know if last year's version, because Judiciary Committee didn't have that talk, and that talk is over the criminal penalties and what's appropriate and what violates our Constitution, what needs to be there for residency requirements. It's more of a technical legal discussion, not a discussion on the same discussion that public health has, which is a discussion on what do people should have access to, what would better their lives. That's a different discussion than what judiciary has. If public health runs that bill again this year, now we start again middle of February and end the middle of May. So public health has a few weeks to run their bills. If they bring that bill out, I hope they bring that bill out early, because the legal technical discussion still has to occur. And I don't know how that bill's changed in the last 3 years for details for that legal aspect of it. I do not know if that federal court case got resolved. I think that is a big issue if the language is the same. Judiciary Committee, if language is under review of a higher court, often lets that higher court rule and then decides, do we like how the higher court ruled? If so, let's codify that. If we dislike how the higher court ruled, which is something we do quite often on a different subject completely, if we dislike how the higher court ruled, we're going to make sure we codify in the state of Connecticut what we wish to happen. So a lot of bills that are under court review are held in judiciary just to see which way the court's going and which way the General Assembly wishes to go, which is a long answer to I think it's an important bill. I'm glad that that Committee of Cognizance has that robust discussion every year on the valid issues of the right to die. And I hope Judiciary needs to get that bill early, because it is a very technical, important legal discussion that needs to happen, and parties need to be willing to address some of those issues are very minor about timing of residencies. Some of those issues we have in judiciary have to do with commas and punctuation. It's not exciting, but it is technically, legally important to make sure the bills will withstand court opinions.
One of the issues that we have with some of the bills that go through is when they change, we have to make sure that the change is something that we can, swallow, because there's a lot of changes that happen in a lot of our bills. When we first see a bill, it could be a really good bill, but then someone puts a change in there, and the change can just like throw it right out the door for some people. We like to get bills in enough time so that when they become bills, I guess, that we second guess on sometimes, and we want input from our constituents so that we can put out information to try and have our constituents respond to things, because some decisions are hard decisions, and it's something that I like to do a lot, is I like to involve my constituents in some of the decision making when I'm up in Hartford, because such great change in some things. So bills, we'll sign bills, and then sometimes we get a little disappointed that we signed them because they changed. It's harder to unsign a bill, I think, than it is to sign a bill. So when a bill goes in and you see a signature on it, and you're like, oh, I'm glad you signed that. And then they have a change to it. Now we're trying to fight to get our name off of it because that change just didn't align with what, either what we believed in or how we thought that others would, like to see it happen or not happen. So it gets challenging.
Or sometimes they add another topic to that bill
For better or for
completely.
worse.
Yeah. They'll add something to the bill that you're totally not really in the favor of, but in order for you to get your side of the bill passed, sometimes you got to agree with that thing that you're not really for, just so you can get the part of the bill that you like out. And that becomes very challenging because then it's like almost being damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Or being weak.
I'm a little confused about how, when something is signed, it could be changed without you being involved.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Once we sponsor a bill, it goes to the committee. And the committee, each committee that looks at a bill can make as many changes as they need. The signers of the bill do not sign off on changes.
So sometimes you see things that you want us to support and you don't see our name on it right away. Well, the reason we don't sign it right away, unless we're kind of confident because it's one of our committee bills or we know the really good details on the bill, we wait almost till it gets to the floor.
And for better or for worse, when it does get to the floor, you can have an entire underlying bill, as was mentioned earlier, entire underlying bill completely changed. So you could have a title, an act concerning changing, the name of X street to Y street, right? And it has nothing to do with streets. So truly, the devil's in the detail, which is why.
Who's in charge of making the laws so that that's not an issue?
That is part of the process.
That's part of the process.
That's part of the process. So
I'm
we-
saying, the process, who's in charge of legislating the process?
So we have joint rules, House and Senate joint rules that are voted on in the first day of session that give the joint rules, and all the legislators vote on them. They're written by the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate, and that has been allowed in Connecticut law since there has been Connecticut law. There are strike-all amendments on bills where the entire bill has been striked, and brand new, 100% new language is there. It happens with the budget every year.
No, I'm just saying, but you guys are the ones who are in charge of changing that or keeping it the same, right?
And sometimes we benefit greatly off of it.
Could you elaborate, please?
So I can benefit greatly. Let's say that the first budget that comes out is the governor's proposal. The governor will make his proposal to us on next Wednesday at noon. There will be things, although I do not have his budget proposal in front of me, there are things that the three of us will 100% disagree with. Even though we're all in the same party, we will disagree with, because that's human nature. That budget bill then goes to Appropriations Committee, which Anthony sits on, and they will have public hearings on each and every section of the budget. And as that committee has public hearings, the different subcommittees will make changes to each section of that budget. And they will strike that section of the first budget and put in a completely different section. Some of it maybe move $1 or move a figure. Some of it completely strike out that section.
But that's a reflection on y'all.
No, that's the process.
That's the
That's the
process.
process.
All right.
So then after Anthony's committee's done with the budget, it will go to the House and Senate to discuss, and we will have caucuses on that version. And members of the House and Senate will each be able to give their input, and they might say, page 335, I'd like this would benefit my community more. And someone else would say, page 534, this would benefit my community if that was changed. That's the process of democracy. And then we make changes. So when the final budget comes before the House and the Senate, it looks substantially different than the first proposal that we will get Wednesday at noon. And we all know we expect it to, because if we just sat back and did the governor's proposal, you wouldn't have had a voice in the House or the Senate.
Right.
And none of the entire public has a voice at the public hearings. Everyone has a voice in the changes of the bill. Now, would I sign on to the budget day one? I wouldn't, because I don't know what's going to change in that bill. But at the end of the day, I might love that budget and sign on to it. And it happens with every big bill. We want people to be part of the discussion. We want the language to be as correct as possible. We will be advocating for our region and our resources in our towns, and we expect our colleagues to do the same thing.
Now, if you're talking in regards to, because we're the ones who make the decisions, you're correct in that. But it's, again, a process, and in order to change that process, it has to be voted on to change, and that means you have to have enough votes to change the process that's
Right,
been
now, I'm
in
trusting y'all to have a collective, set of ethics. Y'all argue about stuff that don't matter. She just said, hey, a couple dollars. So, again, a 10-minute answer, you're brilliant at responding. But come on, y'all know what I'm talking about.
Okay, but it's still part of the process.
But how does the process change, sir?
You have to vote on the change in the totality
Who has
of
to
people,
vote on the
the
change,
legislators,
Who is the legislator, sir?
all your state reps and senators.
Is that y'all?
Yes.
All right, I'm just making sure. Don't make me out to be the fool. Please, go ahead.
No, nobody's trying to make you to be a fool. We're just telling you how it has to happen. If we want to make change to the process, then we have to vote on it. But when you vote on it, you have to have enough people to vote for it. And over the years, as evident as it is, they don't want to change that process.
Who is that?
State legislators and state senators. There's no desire to change that process.
So, again,
So
is
that's
that
why it's
y'all?
correct.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Anybody?
I have a question.
Yes.
There was an article in the Wall Street Journal written by the governor about how wonderful Connecticut is and why we should all live here, and that we do so many things for our constituents. And one of the things that he mentioned was that the pensions for some seniors, there wouldn't be any tax on. I'm curious about where that falls in happening, if at all.
So this year, when we file our taxes, it's for the seniors, so it's not me. But when seniors file their taxes, if your income singularly is less than $75,000, or your household income is less than $100,000, you pay 0 state taxes on pension, annuity, and a portion of your investments.
Starting as of this year?
This
or
year.
it's the taxes of
The
23?
taxes you'll be filing before April 15th. Now, next year, that number goes up. So not everyone is tax-free statewide, because some people's incomes are a little bit more. And Anthony was on cue, so that it's going to go up next year to $100,000 and $150,000.
So it's fully phased out.
So it's phased out. So if you are making like $3 million in income and you're a senior, you're still paying your state taxes. But that's not most of us. A lot of folks are in the $75,000 of income per person, $100,000 per couple this year, and they're going to pay 0 taxes on that income. And then next year, a lot more folks are in the $100,000 to the $150,000 in income.
Is that part of this thing somewhere?
Yes.
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 But what
Page 20.
kind of is happening, was happening, is that if you were, once you hit that $100,000 threshold, so say you earned through your annuity, IRA, pension, over literally $100,000, $100,001, you would be paying the full tax on that amount. Whereas if you earn, say, or pension of $99,999, it would be exempt. So clearly there was a cliff, so to speak. So the Finance Committee, we aim to kind of smooth out that cliff and phase out the exemption. So once you hit about pretty much 150,000, anything below that will not be taxable. And I know you're certainly not middle class if you earn a pension over $150,000. And most folks, here in Connecticut, if you retire with a state pension or earn an IRA, are hardworking people. And the goal of the legislature was to fully eliminate those taxes on retirement income. We've heard many stories from many of our senior neighbors who, as soon as they hit the retirement age in Connecticut, they're looking to the Sunshine State and elsewhere. And I think it is a powerful tool to keep our seniors from maybe looking elsewhere, especially if they want to remain here, if they have their families here, selling a house, downsize, and want to stay put. We want to make it attractive for our seniors to continue living here. And I think it goes a long way of continuing to make sure Connecticut's an affordable place to live.
And folks who have military pensions, those have been tax-free before this law change, and those military pension income does not affect your tax-free changes this year and next year. So some folks did not know we were tax-free military pensions. We have been for years. We won't take credit for that. Others did that before us. But it does come off your income anyway as non-taxable income.
And in regards to taxes, someone had asked earlier to give an example, and it would be like prior to January 2024, the state applied 3% tax to the first 10,000 of an individual's earning, and 20,000 for a couple. In addition, 5% rate applied to the next $40,000 earning. 80,000 for a couple was reduced to 4.5%. So an example of a family with income around 90,000, they'll pay approximately $497 less taxes a year. That was an example that they made up for someone earlier.
And for folks working, your state taxes did decrease this year. You might have noticed a slight increase in your paychecks. Your state income taxes did decrease this year as well. So if you don't look at your direct deposits, do look at those things. It might be for someone a few dollars or $20, but that really adds up. And it is the lowest income got the highest percentage change. So our folks who are working class got the highest percentage change. Folks who are middle class got lower changes, and the folks that are in the high class are incredibly high earners. You're still paying your state taxes, but those of us who are working, especially in the low and mid income, do take a look at your checks, because they did go up a little bit more, and do something for your families with that little extra bit of money.
And one other thing of note, finance revenue and bonding, we also handle tax expenditures. We did increase the earned income tax credit earned income tax credit at the state level from 30.5% to 40% of the federal earned income tax credit, which is very significant for especially folks who are working, right, but are essentially either working poor or really, quite frankly, struggling. And I think it goes a tremendously long way of reducing poverty. I would say, though, one thing of note, and I'm only speaking for myself, I think one thing that the state should look into in the future, and we did kind of dabble in this policy during the pandemic, but seriously taking a look at a child tax credit. Our state budget is going to be experiencing significant budgetary pressures, just given some of the fiscal guardrails we have in place, which I think have been very important in terms of ensuring that we, our government, living within our means, but also ensuring that we're not kicking the can down the road, which perhaps has been done in the past and well before we got there. But I do think that we need to be very intentioned in making sure that we're an affordable place for families to live, especially folks who have children. And there is a policy proposal that has been floated that would provide a child tax credit to the tune of about $600 per child, the cap at 3 children. So if you're a family, 3 children, you would essentially receive a child tax credit of $1,800. And what we saw at the federal level when the federal government had a child tax credit was that it was the single greatest reducer of child poverty this country has ever seen. And as soon as that credit fell by the wayside, I know a lot of families, just from conversations that I've had, have really struggled dealing with just their day-to-day bills and groceries. So it's something I think we need to take a look at, and it should be a priority. Again, only speaking for myself, but just wanted to add that as well.
Yeah. We were able to do that in our state a couple years ago before you joined us, and we had a tax credit that came out in August, and it was, I think it was up to $400 or $500 per family, but it was, you got paid, there was money per child. It really helped a lot of families get ready for the fall season, for back to school. It was wonderful. Unfortunately, it was COVID money, and it was some budget constraints. This year we are in a slightly different budget discussion, but I know some of our colleagues have put that in for discussion in Finance Committee, and I hope you guys find a way to do that again, because it was really helpful for folks.
Thank you all very much for your
Great
accessibility.
seeing you, Chris.
Appreciate it. Take care. You well.
And the front row had their hand up.
Completely different area, but this is what's going to be pre-seen. The traffic lights, the traffic light cameras more. I lived in Arizona for, unfortunately, 20 years, and they installed them in Tucson and Phoenix, and then removed them because of the costs and privacy concerns. So now I see stories about Connecticut going for them, and I saw them in there. Why are we going for them if other places are removing them for costs and concerns and not proving their worth?
So the city of Waterbury really wanted traffic cameras in the city. So if you are driving to Waterbury, that will probably be the first place that has traffic cameras. They're red light cameras only. So do your full and complete stops at your cameras, at your intersections. Connecticut did change our law last year to allow municipalities, if they wish, to have traffic cameras for red lights only. So a lot of the issues in other states is that traffic cameras were getting folks and running plates that were unregistered, or running, using the cameras to see other things like cell phone use. They were allowed to catch for a lot of crimes, and that is not fair in my mind. So the traffic cameras are red light only. There has to be a sign at the location that there will be a red light camera. I'm not saying we should blow the rest of the red lights, but it does have to be noticed that there will be there. And the municipality, if they choose to do it, has to file paperwork to show that they are not just choosing areas of racial inequity. So we're not just putting them on one side of town or putting them near a location where a certain group may choose to worship to catch one group doing red lights and not the general population. That has to be approved by the state before the red light cameras can go up.
And you have to show data.
And you have to show data. You can't just say, I think. You have to show actual data that there's a safety issue at this intersection, and the safety issue has to do with people not stopping at the red lights.
And I apologize if you've said this already, but the municipality also has to opt in.
The municipality has to choose to do it and choose to follow all these things. The municipality has to pay all the costs. Now, when you get the ticket, because it will come to the registered owner of the vehicle, you can use the Shaggy defense of it wasn't me. Because they will only, the camera is for, it's not for the people in the vehicle. The camera has to be pointed on the license plate only. I'm not saying again, you should stop at your red lights. And if you do get caught violating the law, you should pay your penalty. But the Shaggy defense does occur for this because it is the camera only. I think we were aware of what the other states did, and not being the first really helped us understand in committee a lot of the problems with inequities with this system. Again, Waterbury really wants it, so pay attention, Waterbury. I know the municipalities that I represent, the cost and the reasons for doing it and the hoops that they have to jump through to make sure it's fair and equitable and safe, they're not looking to do it right now. Now, could we have, like, what's that show in Providence with the guy about the red lights?
Oh, he's great.
Could we have a Connecticut show like that? Apparently we're the only ones who watch that one. Where people are looking at it, possibly it'll bit more be in Waterbury. I think, there is data that our streets are not safe, and we should all take a moment when we're driving to drive safely as possible. I think the other bill that I think is a better bill that we did pass and is utilized statewide has to do, we have two bills that are really good, has to do with the wrong way driver plans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of us, speaking for everyone, a lot more excited about that bill than we were about Waterbury's red light issues. And you can see it now over by Pequot. You can see the new wrong way driver features to have more lights if someone's going on the wrong way. They're in Stonington, they've added more to really start dealing with the wrong way driver issues. I also think our work safety with the tickets, that was a pilot program last year. I know a lot of us probably dealt with it in East Lyme on the construction sites. Now, just because the pilot program ended doesn't mean we should drive fast through work safety zones. But having that car there with the tickets that went out, even just having the car there and the signs, really got a lot of people to drive safer around construction workers. And I know the committee will be taking up that pilot program again. I'll be voting yes for it. I'll co-sponsor the bill, even though I haven't seen it, because I do think we need to continue that with the safety on our highways.
Someone just texted me, it's on page 21.
Thank you.
The woman in the back with the braid.
Hi, Aundre, I'm so glad that you brought up the child tax credit and that making, it more affordable for families to live. And I know some folks in the room are working on addressing housing, like the price of housing and regulations in New London. So I'm just wondering if you all can speak to like what we can expect in terms of pricing, like rent regulation, and like what are the regulations on landlords, absentee landlords, homeowners that are spiking rent prices and making it completely unaffordable for folks to live.
That would start on page 14 with tenant protections. The legislature saw to establish new tenant protections that expand certain existing protections, allow municipalities to set civil penalties of up to $2,000 per day against landlords for each violation of municipal rules on maintaining safe and sanitary housing. That was one that we were really, we had quite a big opinion, and you guys even, I think, came and spoke on that. That was something that we were really worried about because of, going through COVID, and then it was actually prior to COVID, but it got worse during COVID, and it was a struggle to get back to normal, as you know now. Requires give tenants the opportunity to request and complete a pre-occupancy walkthrough of a dwelling, and limits rental applications rate related fees. And now the City of New London does have a fair rent commission that we're paying close attention to make sure that people's concerns are getting heard, and it's an ongoing thing, and it's going to need more work because we know the teeth aren't strong enough.
Right.
So that is something that has to be worked on. I don't think any of us are on housing.
No, planning and development has some cognizance or
Oh, that's true.
some housing.
I read them through screening.
Yeah.
But
That helps
the
too.
changing the rental application fee is huge to put a cap on that.
Yeah.
Because if you're applying to 6 or 7 places and what people were paying just to have their credit scores pulled was absolutely ridiculous. So this law is a huge change. It
That's a
should
lot. We got a lot
also,
of calls on that.
a lot of calls. It also reduces in this law the timeline landlords have to give your security deposit back.
Yeah.
Because if you move out of one place, you need a security deposit at your new place. And landlords holding on to that money really puts people out in the spot unnecessarily. So we've heard from folks about a lot of the changes. And Groton has had a fair rent commission for a bit too. Both commissions can always do more, and I think whatever we can do for people to have access to know if you got a late rent increase, you have a place to go in the government to talk about it and to see if it's fair. For folks who are facing evictions, now New London was part of the initial eviction program through Connecticut Legal Services, located right here in New London. Groton got added to that program in the fall. So if folks are facing evictions, you have free attorneys through legal services. So no longer will people be at housing court self-represented dealing with the landlord's attorney. You will get access to attorneys if you're income eligible through Connecticut Legal Services who are trained in evictions, who are there with you at the eviction mediation, so that you're not feeling like a court representative, a mediator, and some attorney are telling you what to do and you don't have a voice. That has helped a lot of people since the program has gotten off the ground to get their voices heard about the conditions in their apartments, about why they withhold rent, or what time they need. Even if they didn't pay because they couldn't pay, what time do you need to get out and get a new place? And the judgments that are being entered are far more impactful for renters than it was when people were unrepresented. So do tell people, call legal services if you get a notice to quit, so that the attorneys will protect your rights, and it's all free.
Yes, and just one other note about that. All three of us supported a pretty comprehensive housing bill last year in the legislature. So a very arduous process and a very long night of debate. But I think all three of us, it's not lost on us that we are facing an affordable housing crisis. I'm somebody who is a fierce advocate of protecting environmental quality in our environment. But I think we can certainly balance the needs of protecting our environment, but also supplying housing. Both in the Planning and Development Committee last year, Representative Conley and I heard a bill regarding transit-oriented development. All three of us are strong advocates of transit-oriented development, and I think can play an enormous tool in deploying affordable housing. I think young people or empty nesters, and everybody in between want to live in communities that have vitality. Mixed-use development where at the ground level you got awesome restaurants and storefronts and overhead many housing units in a mix of housing units in a mix of people with a mix of incomes. That's what brings vitality to our communities. And so again, making sure that we're investing in our Shoreline East, which I'm sure we'll be getting questions on shortly and getting into a little greater detail on. But all of these things go hand in hand, and I think we just have to kind of work together and dispel a lot of the myths that are out there about what happens when you build housing and kind of the riffraff that comes into a community. I think that a lot of it, frankly, is just our lies. And so, I've been working very closely with our majority leader who's been very active in this space. I'm talking about our housing crisis, and very eager and excited to continue participating in that process.
Is there anything on the state legislature level as far as limiting or regulating short-term rentals, because they have a huge impact on housing affordability and availability? So I just was...
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to take a stab at that. Over the last couple of weeks, I've had some conversations with our committee chair for P&D, Lady Cabral-Stokoraw. Last year, we entertained a bill regarding short-term rentals that dealt with, there was a proposal that would impose an excise tax on short-term rentals, a municipal levy. Short-term rentals are subjected to a tax akin to what hotels would pay, but in terms of a municipal, there's no such municipal levy. There's no way for municipalities to recoup the costs of regulating or the cost of hosting short-term rentals, right? When your fire departments get called or your police departments get called because there are parties at a short-term rental, say in Mystic, those costs do add up. And most importantly, when you see a proliferation of short-term rentals like we've seen in the coastline, where many homes that are intended for families are purchased for the express purpose of turning them into, summer rentals, not just long-term summer rentals, short-term summer rentals, where you have a mix of people coming into a community every day. I think we should be alarmed and should be concerned. I'm not anti, right? I think we've all, I'm sure, used Airbnbs or VRBOs in the past, any form of short-term rental, but I think there needs to be a little bit more regulation at the statewide level. In Massachusetts, they've put in place a regulatory scheme that addresses it, and where actually you have to have a tax ID on file for your respective short-term rental with their revenue services. And they also impose a tax, and also municipalities, Cape Cod, Boston, they have a separate tax, and they've actually developed a pretty healthy revenue source from those funds. So I think it's something that we should continue looking at, especially if we're not able to get something done in that space. But I know it's important from the far west of my district all the way to the east.
Right, just to play devil's advocate on that issue, you have some of your municipalities that have regulated short-term rentals through their local zoning laws. So anything that we do in the state, we want to be mindful of that. That if a municipality has found a solution, and in some of our shoreline municipalities, they might have a couple blocks that are allowed 14-day stays. I know one of our municipalities in Groton, there's 30-day stays only allowed. So one of the issues with some of the bills that come up is the towns that have done efforts and made these changes in their town that their towns have voted on and their constituents have agreed on in the local way, do not want us overturning their work as well. So we have the desires of some people who have had struggles in their towns, that their towns haven't been able to get around the zoning and are saying, state, come help because our town hasn't been able to deal with this zoning issue. And then we have other towns that have said, well, we figured it out, and maybe for one town it has to be 30 days or more, or for one town it's a few areas allow a short-term rental. And those towns are saying, come on, we did our work, why are you stepping in, long arm of the government, and stopping us? I do think we also have a very strong legal history in our state of ownership. Businesses own places. We own businesses, we own homes, LLCs own homes. So we do have to make sure if we craft any statewide zoning restrictions on home ownership, that we are not violating other sections of our law and setting us up for constitutional challenges. Because if someone wants to own a home as, a business, something could be zoned a multi-use where a business is actually using a house as their business. We don't want to say you have to close your business. We don't want to have those kinds of consequences, which is very different than the party house down the street at the beach that a lot of folks are talking to us about. So I would advise everyone, please don't just talk to us about it, please talk to your municipal leaders, because that's really where a lot of these things can happen quicker. Registration of who they are, having them have to report a person for contact to the police, making sure that there's parking plans, that there's issues that the neighbors are seeing day to day. Those can all be regulated locally a lot quicker than the state could, because we don't have the ability to do some of those regulations. Those are municipal regulations.
And to expand on the good representative, completely agree with her, and just a little more context, even in Groton, where the town of Groton, in most cases, the town of Groton has the direct zoning jurisdiction or zoning powers, but there are many political subdivisions within Groton, fire districts, for example. So Groton City and Groton Long Point, they have their own independent zoning authority, as does the Nolan Fire District, which has their own zoning authority. And Nolan, for example, through their zoning regs, they voted to essentially ban short-term rentals, whereas in Groton City, it is permissible under their current zoning regs. In Groton and Stonington, they've taken a look at through their zoning regs to make some updates and changes to further regulate them, and that is absolutely incredibly important, to ensure that our respective municipalities continue to have that right to regulate as they see fit.
So if we made it 14 days or less for short-term rentals, which some folks would say that would really help, he would be getting thousands of calls from Nolan saying, we're 30 days, we've decided to be 30 days, stop changing our laws.
Exactly, and there is truly in Hartford, and we know this just by the virtue of our respective groups out in here, but there's no one-size-fits-all policy, and we really should avoid that at all costs, no matter what the issue is.
And one of the important things that people did ask was make sure that if there are short-term rentals or Airbnbs, that there's a management person available 24 hours a day for that place, so that if there's a problem, that person can be contacted to kill the problem, because that's what a lot of us are having problems with, not being able to reach people through that.
I have to leave because I have another meeting, but I just want to express I will say support. I don't know if you guys have heard about the Let Parents Parent bill. It's something that is going to be proposed to you guys, because that will require guardians and parents to be notified by every school if several events are happening to their kids. And we're talking about something that has been happening in our state when there are some needs in their kids that are not being consulted by the parents. And this bill will at least require when there is a minor, when there is a child, and there is like injury, suicidal ideation, behavioral intervention meetings, and a lot of things that are going to be proposed in that bill. I just want to, being a leader in the community, to express my support to that when you see that, and our people are definitely on board to not take the parents away of the process of developing the character and the kids that are growing up in our state.
Do you mind repeating the name of that bill again?
Yes, let parents parent.
Let parents parent. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll make sure to take a look at it when it comes through.
Thank you.
It'd be good to make sure that you send an email so
I'm gonna
it's
send it to you.
documented.
Yeah,
And
I'm gonna send like once everything's put together, because I know it's ready to be presented, so I will follow that. Thank you. I have to
Thank
excuse
you.
myself.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
Thank you for your
Appreciate you
services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you all. Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
Good night.
Yes.
I'm not going to talk about shoreline. It's just,
We were waiting.
I know. We'll get to that later.
Teed it up.
No, but my concern goes back to an earlier comment about the use of cameras and red lights. I do, in fact, and have been driving I-95 ever since I-95 was established in the state of Connecticut. And I can tell you the stretch from the Rhode Island border to Net Haven is extremely dangerous to drive on because there appears to be very little traffic enforcement of speed. And with the increase in deaths associated with traffic, either automated cameras to catch speeders or a serious increase in state police to enforce that, I think is really important. I myself have gotten almost sideswiped a half dozen times just in this year. And when I'm driving right at 65 miles an hour and someone comes weaving by at clearly well over 90 miles an hour. And it's just unacceptable. And I know there are some problems with having local communities do that, but on state roads, I really think that's very important, that we get that under control if we possibly can. And I'd be interested in knowing what you all think about that. I mean, I've driven through, well, recently through Massachusetts, where going up 91, they're like hawks out there. They have them lined up and pulling people over. And I've been in places like Maryland recently and Virginia where they have cameras. And they're very serious about controlling the speed. And it has slowed down those roads. So I'd be interested in your collective thoughts on what we should do about this. Because I think it's a serious public health problem for the state.
It's a very serious issue, but it's also a concern when you put in cameras. I think I'd rather see more officers on the street doing their stops.
Why is that?
Because of the misuse of the cameras sometimes. You know, people, you know, and I know Christine said that cameras are supposed to pick up the license plate only. I don't always agree that it does just the license plate, and I only know that from experience because I've gotten a ticket where my face, and you could see who I was, so I couldn't play the, nah, that's not me.
See, I didn't get my face on my ticket.
And I don't.
I still paid it.
And you know, it's a ticket you got to pay, but still, it's trouble to me when you know, you have the visibility of the person, I guess. And I know the person should not be driving that way in order to get their face in the place, but until we get a little bit more control over how we put our data away and how our data is safe, it's just a little scary, you know. I wasn't against it totally when they put it at the construction sites and when it was put on some parts of the highway. But I think that it does need to be A sign should be up in those areas, you know, and, you know, I think a sign itself slows people down a lot of times. Sometimes it doesn't, but it does quite a bit at times. So that's where I am on it.
Yeah, I have some serious issues about giving more access.
10 minutes, okay.
Yeah, 10 minutes before the place closes. I have serious issues about giving more access to cameras and more access to having personal data be stored by third-party companies. I don't think we're ready for that in this state. I also have concerns about privacy and about what people are watching if police have access to things and able to ticket and able to look up your vehicle or give you tickets for other reasons and secondary stops. I have some big concerns about that. So I would not be voting tomorrow for that bill. I am agreeable to having cameras at construction zones. I think that was really helpful for safety reasons. I think we have some big issues in that area of the road that are structural issues. There aren't safe areas to pull people over, and I think that's one of the reasons why folks, not that we should drive fast and unreasonable in those areas, but I think that is one of the reasons why you don't see the pullovers there on the areas that it's 2 lanes and there's no shoulder. The officer, it would be unsafe to pull someone over unless they're really acting horribly unsafe. So we have that issue with 95 being as small as it is. I think we certainly have issues with our state police department. I'll be one of them to say it on Judiciary Committee that's doing the investigation now into tickets and racial profiling. I think these are real issues that I'm glad we're talking about. And I think the people who have done wrong should be held accountable. And that's an issue for trust of our general population, that if there are known problems in the department, we have a new department head, we're starting over with a lot of changes in that department, and hopefully things will get a little better and a little more trustworthy. But right now, there is investigations in the committee, in the legislature, there is investigations federally as well with ticketing and behavior of people on our highways. So I don't want to have that conversation and leave out the other very important, relevant reasons why we have these issues.
I think, if I can interject for a second, that, you know, I've had the same experiences and it makes me extremely angry. These people are going 90, 100 miles an hour. I've seen people chasing each other, 2 cars, they're weaving. They're going so fast that a policeman in a car is not going to pull them over without causing a huge amount of danger to everybody else. And that the only way maybe to get them is with cameras, I think. You know, you gotta take a picture of their license somehow and, you know, then track them down. Because, you know, it's just really dangerous. They're on top of you before you even know it. You don't see them. You know, and I've, you know, had my heart go into my head, you know, just sometimes, you know, it can be scary. So.
That's very scary.
Yeah.
I will agree with you. But I think at this point, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to make the community comfortable with just putting them up all over the place.
Representative Conley and Nolan, I think, articulated all of my concerns very well. I would note, you know, where I think it could be a valuable tool is simply just preventing death on our roadways, you know, especially pedestrian deaths. Another horrible statistic or horrible increase that we've seen since the pandemic is the sheer number of folks, you know, pedestrians who are dying on our roadways, and largely because of, you know, cars driving at really excessive speeds, especially in communities that are supposed to be walkable and you know, pedestrian friendly and bicycle cyclist friendly. We've seen also a significant increase in deaths associated with bicyclists over in Stonington, and so I think it is, although a bit unrealistic to expect that there will be red light cameras on every single street corner, but I think, you know, again, we can't deploy this technology at an exponential rate unless we address some of those data privacy concerns and ensure that that data is not getting in the hands of wrong people and people we assume we can trust to handle this data.
And the last question, so we let our employees out of the library.
While we're in the conversation of cars and all the safety stuff, I've had recently, which was news to me, the idea of when a person get a ticket from another state and the person doesn't pay that ticket, whether they forget or they never got the notification, whatever that scenario is,
that they have to pay a reinstatement fee to if their license gets suspended to that state. Like for example, Connecticut and with a lot of laws, sometimes there are some intersection between Rhode Island and Massachusetts. But I found out recently that that's not one of the cases. Had a few families dealing with that, where they then had to pay the ticket and then pay the state of Massachusetts a reinstatement fee, and then pay the state of Connecticut another reinstatement fee, right? And that's state law. So you have someone who probably can't afford to pay a ticket already, have to then pay the ticket that they did not pay, that they couldn't afford to pay, and then now pay the state of Massachusetts, or whichever state that is in that case, that reinstatement fee, to then now, for Connecticut to give them their license, also have to pay Connecticut, I believe, $165 to get their license back. So you have a family now who can't go to work because their license is suspended. They don't have the money, and if they don't have the money, they can't pay the fee of the ticket. And now being told that their license is suspended, for them to get it back, they have to pay, in that case, almost $500 to $800 back to the states. So they say that state statute, actually, they can't do it. Even if you call DMV, you try to talk to them, they can't do anything about it because it's a state law. So I'm just curious as to what are you guys' thoughts on that, and are you aware that that's something that's happening in the state of Connecticut?
Well, sort of. So if you have a Connecticut license, these things get complicated as to what state your car is registered and what state your license is registered and what judgments were on the person from the other state. So I would say I might have a little more knowledge than my colleagues on that, just being an attorney and dealing with that a little bit more. If you have a judgment, if you get a ticket in another state and the judgment attaches, so you missed your ticket, you missed your court date, you didn't pay in time, you didn't update your address on your license, whatever.
Connecticut.
But your ticket, no, the ticket happened outside of Connecticut.
Yeah.
We have a law that's required, is that we have to honor those suspensions. So if the ticket required in the other state that the registration expires and that the license gets suspended, and these things could happen because someone missed their court date, which is a valid reason to happen. Those things get attached in the other state. Now, in Connecticut, if your registration has been suspended, there is a restatement fee for everyone if your registration has been suspended for whatever reason. Now, if folks are getting double fees or different fees, please take our information and they can reach out to us, and we have legislative assistants who can help them with that, to understand what they got charged with and how this affects them and what we can assist them with. We can't represent anyone in criminal court, just to be clear, our legislative assistants don't have that power, but they can go through the fee structure, and if we know exactly what fees people are having difficulty with, we can work on those fees. But I haven't been contacted about a person with this yet, so I look forward to hearing about it.
And if you're asking if we agree with the double hit, I don't.
Yeah, because I don't believe if someone, especially with the connection you have with Massachusetts, if you already pay a reinstatement fee, that's the reason why your license is suspended. Why then the state of Connecticut is taking another $165 from that person to get their license back?
But that
So
Massachusetts fee isn't doing anything with their Connecticut license, just to be clear. If that's a Massachusetts problem with the ticket, that Massachusetts fee for licensure, because I went to school in Massachusetts and I hate to say, known to be a little heavy with the gas. That Massachusetts fee has nothing to do with your Connecticut license or your Connecticut registration. I do say. So it has nothing to do with your Connecticut license or your Connecticut registration. It's a fee that they've added, that state has added to speeding. It actually does not do anything with your Connecticut license and registration. But we have colleagues in Massachusetts, if we realize the problem is the Massachusetts statute, that we can talk to about that.
Yeah, so that's why I'm bringing it up, because I know for certain things, Connecticut with Rhode Island or Massachusetts talks and figure out the ways that that doesn't become a double fee. So I just want the legislature to be aware of that and to have that conversation, because I just don't, the people that it's impacting do not have the power and sometimes the language barrier to call the state representatives and tell them this is what they're dealing with. Because in that moment, they just go into panic mode and call a friend that they know they could talk to about it. Which, when you call me about it, I'm not an attorney. So there's only so much I can do as an individual to address the issue.
But if you get their permission to speak to one of us and share what's going on, if you can get us copy, picture, if they can send you a picture of the ticket so we can see what their charges were, we could look up what happened. if they give you permission to do that, we'd be happy to look into it for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So everybody, if you don't mind, taking some literature in the back and
Sign up to the
and
email.
signing up for our emails and the things that, you know, we put out for events and stuff, and also to send us your stuff that you're doing so that we can help you put it out. We'd appreciate it. We really thank you for coming out tonight. This is one of the larger crowds that we've had in New London. And we hope the next one you see that you'll come and bring somebody. And that, you know, if you have questions, please feel free to email. If you need a phone number to call, I'll give you that. But we just really appreciate you coming out today.
And another big thank you to our outreach coordinator, Greg,
Yes.
and also Terri Roper for televising and recording this meeting that will be televised.
And it'll be on
Channel
SEC,
12.
it will be on
Yeah.
SEC TV, Channel 12,
Yeah.
public access.
Yeah.
Tell your friends.
Good night, everyone.